Hi. We'll see if any of you come back. I lost you. I don't know what happened. It just suddenly cut off. Are any of you coming back? Hi. Hi. Glad to see you. We'll see if anybody else makes it back on. Whoop. Hi. I should have taken the time to run to the bathroom. Thanks for coming back. So this is a weird thing, right? I don't know why that cut out. It just did. Whatever. So I started to talk about women and body image. And there was such a premium placed on Joan of Arc's virginity that every single time they moved me, because I was also considered an object, like I was a mascot, but then I was also a general, and I could direct things, but even once I was captured, like I remember certain parts of this, I really do. And I remembered them when I was a baby too, which is even creepier. Sometimes, not really creepy, but sometime I'll wind up telling a lot of stories about, like I had dreams about this from infancy. Yeah, I'm not going to go into certain memories, but I will tell you that in the Joan of Arc lifetime, both before and after capture, because for some reason, even the English did this, like even when I was captured, they did this too, is that every time they moved me, I was held, because there were certain protocols that they would observe. But even the protocols of royalty, which should have protected me, somehow also didn't apply to me. I mean, or it did, they just didn't observe them because I didn't fit into any category whatsoever. But one of the things they did when they moved me was that every last time they moved me to a different holding place, they would re-examine me with a public vaginal exam to make sure that the hymen was still intact. Is she still a virgin? And this would be done in public. Sometimes there would be a crowd, and sometimes there were, but there was also people. Even if it was in a room, there were still people. And one time, I swear to God, there was a guy in the cupboard looking out, and it was like I knew he was in there, and he was hiding. Whatever. At some point, you were just an object, but they did that. And there is very much an issue, because the whole idea of body image, everything perpetuated because there was this template being with polarity surrounding just feminine form and very much the issue of being something on display and to be judged. So judged for perfection, like we're gonna judge you, and you're gonna be put on display if you're perfect. And it's really not I don't find it enjoyable. I'm also Arcturian. Most Arcturians, when they incarnate, this seems a little bit off the subject too, but it probably isn't. Most Arcturians, when they incarnate, they choose to be neither really attractive nor very unattractive, because anything that places a lot of importance on physical appearance, we think it's shabby. Most of the time, we like to be somewhere just in the middle. Just basically, don't pay attention to it. Anything that would noticeably draw your attention to physical appearance, we like to just skip it. Where was I going with this? Oh, at any rate, within the triad, so there was that, like the remember I was talking yesterday about polarization, hyperpolarization, and I was the representative of, like the hyper pure emblem of femininity. So that, but then you've got the other side, because I remember I said that Carmen Lizardo is the holding the opposite extreme, and she was Isabeau of Bavaria. If you go back and read the Joan of Arc story, I do recommend Mark Twain's. There are a whole bunch of versions, but I recommend Mark Twain's. He thought it was his best book. I thought he did a pretty good job. He talked me up a bit. But one of the things, if you learn the story, and Isabeau of Bavaria was considered the wicked queen, the one who will tank the country. France will be ruined by a woman and saved by a virgin. We installed that prophecy because we were trying to set a platform, lay a bed, so that it would kind of galvanize the imagination, get into the group consciousness, because that's really where the harnessing ability is. That's really what you want. Isabeau of Bavaria is Carmen Lizardo now, and she had a tough job too. I don't envy her that job one bit. She was Vashti. When I participated as Esther, she was Vashti. She was the queen who said, no, I will not dance naked at the king's gathering, and I will not come when I'm called. She was very much a strong feminist, and she ruled herself as a queen. And she wouldn't be summoned. You don't snap your fingers. She wanted to be treated as an equal. And because of that, at the time in her lifetime as Vashti, they banished her because she just refused. She wanted to be treated as an equal, and they sent her out of the kingdom. She lost all of her statues. She lost everything. So when she came back as Isabeau of Bavaria, because we're all in there fighting the good fight, it didn't work. We're just going to keep going back over and over and over until we get the fucker done. We'll have equality regardless. And those of us who can't find it, if you haven't made the 11 gateway, you're not coming this round. It doesn't mean you're bad. That means you're spiritually immature and you need more time. But we can't wait any longer. There is going to be a second wave. And nobody's ever lost. It's not like you're lost. You're going to go for another round, but we'll see you at the gateway. And if you make the next 26 years, good luck. Better luck next time. I don't mean to sound callous. Nobody's ever lost. The Ascension portal opens after 3 rounds. Every 26,000 years, we hit this portion. I don't really want to get into like universal mechanics, but we hit this portion of the galaxy where we go through a photon belt, and there's the opportunity to go up. David Wilcock has he does a very good job explaining this. But approximately every 100,000 years, approximately. I can't remember exactly. It's like 1, 2, 3 times around, I think, is when you have, there's like a bigger window with more at stake. At any rate, so if there's no development, you begin to get a bit concerned. If they're your people, you're trying to get them out. But there are other third dimensional planets. I'm not trying to panic anybody. If you have loved ones and you think these people are really asleep and they seem like they're really doubling down into 3D, they probably are. But don't worry. I mean, everybody's going to be watched over. It's not like there's some of us who are chosen, some of us who are not chosen. It doesn't work that way. However, I kind of do digress. At some point, I'll talk about that. However, I was talking about Isabeau of Bavaria. The reason it's important is because Joan of Arc was holding on to the hyper pure virgin aspect, and on the other side was Isabeau of Bavaria, who did assist in bringing down the country. She did a lot of things that didn't exactly serve the French, but she was slut shamed real bad, really, really bad. She was considered, and she slept with a lot of people. She was very sexually open. Slept with the king's brothers, slept with foreigners, other countries. She herself was not French. She came from Bavaria. But she also diverted when France was really, really super low on funds. She diverted a whole bunch of money that was supposed to go to the army. She diverted and sent it to Bavaria, sent it to her own people, and had huge Christmases at her house. And the French army starved. I mean, not completely. Some of us lived. But she did definitely act against the French. And she also did everything imaginable to take the power away from the king, who was Josh Cram. King Charles, the father of the Dauphin. They were both King Charles. So I'll probably get into this a little bit later. I really just wanted to talk about femininity more. But the king who started out as King Charles the Beloved, when he first took power, France was in just a terrible, terrible state. And he knew what to do. He had experience as a soul ruling empires, did a very, very good job too. He had a certain amount of experience, and he came in, even though he was young when he took the throne. This isn't the Dauphin that I gave the crown to. This is his father. He immediately went to work addressing the economy, and he started to give money back to the population that was starving. And he did stuff with the bankers. He just started moving stuff around, and he tossed out all of the advisors. He brought in the advisors of his choice, and the population called him Charles the Beloved. And they had a few really successful years of that. And that was before I even came on the scene. He was the first one in the Joan of Arc triad to land and take his position. And then basically he was there was the original plan, and then there was what happened. Because it didn't go to, like a lot of things, it doesn't always go the way you want. Sometimes the first plan doesn't work, and you have to reroute. And we had to reroute while we were on the ground. And that sucked. We had to reroute. Hang on. Drawing a blank. Wait a second. So I won't get too much into history, but I will say that because the material's out there. If you want to learn the story, I would say go read a book, because it will give you the history. Once Josh Cram, who was King Charles, not the Dauphin that I crowned, but his father, there was a point that I guess I will disclose this. There was a point that the sheer density of the planet and the location at that time it was unbelievably difficult. Even though we have circuitry that protects our physical forms when we come down, and we need it, otherwise we would absolutely die without it. At that time, much more so than now. It was so dense that, and because he was the first one in, and even though he had all this protection, physically he just started to break down. There's a tremendous amount of energy in going through something that's extremely dense, and it was very hard in his physical form. So he got very ill physically. He physically started to break down. And I had not, this is another one, I hadn't intended to talk about this at all. I don't feel like I'm going to cry at this time, but I'm debating whether I should I guess I may as well just spill it. I had intended to structure it differently. It was my intention when I dealt with this information to give you some of the historical data, witnesses, and accounts of people who were there. And because we're connected, I know what happened. And our circuitry is still running, and I'm still connected to the same individuals. And also I'm off the timeline, so I can see, all time there, time doesn't actually exist. When we have the experience of time, we have the experience of linear time, but when you're off the timeline, you can see all of these things happening simultaneously, which when you're in the third dimension is a difficult thing to imagine, but it is true. So I don't know if I'm going to get to it today, but at some point I'm going to talk about the way concurrent lifetimes work and time travel, and how you actually can address stuff that went on in the past. You absolutely can. And you don't even necessarily need a Stargate or a machine or anything like that. You could actually just go off the timeline and tweak things. If you move something over here, its counterpart over here that has, because of the way balance works, you can turn something over here and it shifts over here also. Sometime, and they told me that I need to use myself as an example. I've got about 6 different storylines going on right now, but and they're also giving me more information sometime. So I guess I will talk. When the energy runs fast, I go nonlinear. So right now I'm feeling all of you. I know who's here, and it's coming from, it's a little bit imbalanced. Like I know what audience I'm speaking to, and there's certain, it has a weight to it. Kind of like if you're attached to a lot of different strings and some are pulling on you more than others, there's just a little bit of an imbalance, and I can feel that. But then there's also information coming down that's coming down in different shapes. And it has to do with what they want me to talk about in the future. And from a third dimensional perspective, I would agree that this isn't the way to structure anything. If you're going to deliver information, you should break it down into subjects and order it so people can understand. But that's not the way it comes in, especially not right now. There will be a point, I have been assured, that right now it's more about energy flow, and there's going to be a point later on where it's going to be more codified and assembled to be more easily accessible to people. But for the time being, until, and I even know who's bringing that in and the way that's going to work. Sometimes when energy comes down, my head bothers me. Like my hair bothers me. I can't, everything's uncomfortable and everything's uncomfortable. Cancel. So I was saying when King Charles, the Dauphin's father, was in office, he was called Charles the Beloved because he was addressing the economy and doing a very good job. And then he got ill, and one of the things that happened is that he became imbalanced, and it was just an energetic imbalance. So what they don't tell you in the history books, there's been a shit ton written about this stuff too, but nobody has ever come to his defense. Because like, I remember I didn't know anything about Joan of Arc, but then in 2013, all my memories came back, and it was very traumatic. And I did a certain amount of reading because I was worried I was going crazy too. I did a certain amount of reading, and it really did convince me that I was right, because not only did I knew certain things were wrong, certain things in the book, and it wasn't even so much like hearing somebody else's account of something, but there are certain things that I'm like, what the fuck? Who wrote that? That's not true. Or certain, like, something will be told through a particular lens. And I'm like, dude, no. I can tell you what happened behind the scenes, and this isn't it. There are, and even some specific things that happened, like which I probably will address later. Certain specific things, like somebody falsified testimony too. It's minor. It was minor, but it's stuck in my head. Like, somebody said they knew me, and I was like, you live down the street. You're not my. Somebody said they were a good friend of mine. Oh, I've known her for my whole life. I've known her. That's not true. I knew her. She lived down the street. I wouldn't say we were friends. I don't know where she got her story. It's just one of those weird things. Like, I know who that is. But then why would I know who that is if it wasn't me? There were just some sort of, like, I doubted myself, but I wound up, I'm going to tell that's a long episode. At some point, I'm going to wind up talking about the way memories come back and the way certain things are validated. It took me 6 years. It wasn't that I didn't know, I did know, but it took me 6 years. And there was a certain amount of validating. I don't want to get into that right now. Because I still actually just want to talk about body image and why that perpetuated. But first, I want to finish telling you a little bit about Josh Cram, who was in the middle, and he was King Charles. He started out as King Charles the Beloved when he was addressing the economy. And then he got sick. And one of the things, he got sick because of density, and he went out of balance because he was very heavily weighted. There was not enough support, and I was not yet born in that lifetime. He was basically, what they say happened is that he went mad. They changed his name from Charles the Beloved to Charles the Mad. And he was one of those European kings, like one of the crazy kings. Madness runs in kings. And it does. Only it's not just madness. There is actually a method. There's something that we're trying to do. We're trying to get very, very high frequencies down into density. It's incredibly difficult. And he had Isabeau of Bavaria to handle the density. And I'll get back to the slut shaming and the promiscuity, because she's carrying the other half of that template, which gathers, which is kind of over, Joan of Arc couldn't receive, so it led to poverty. It led to a poverty and impoverished physical experience. Carmen Lizardo is coming from a different, that's her name this time, it's coming from a different energetic stream that is, it's basically the other end of the chalice. If the Joan end is the pinched part, we're trying to bring this fucker back to 11, back to balance. So the giving and the receiving are equal, but that's not the way it was. The chalice was highly pinched and highly charged. A war to keep it closed or pry it open, depending on what side of the war you're on. And then you've got Isabeau of Bavaria, who was the other side of the chalice, who's just open to receive everything. And it went in that energy stream when it got out of balance. It was like overtaking and over, it's the feminine flow, but it was hypersexual and hyper pulling, engulfing. It was hyper engulfing. And Josh went out of balance when he was the king. He got trapped in density, but he shot out of his body. And there's very good descriptions as to when this happened. And it was prompted by a noise, I might add. Our energy streams are connected. They all run. It's one great big bunch of soup, but we all hold different jurisdictions. Josh is in the middle, and King Charles, he was in the middle. So half of it was, because what we're trying to do is balance it, but they're very tense, these forces and hostility. So it's a very difficult job. So he had to deal with far too much density and all of the reptilian dynamics in the court that came with power and the management of money and who's going to take his power, because once he got ill, somebody else had to take over the throne. So first it was Isabeau of Bavaria, but that was also various other aspects of royalty who were just so fucking predatory. Remember when I was talking about reptilians, that they have, and the dark forces, or they're predatory in different, they advance in different ways, and they will eat their young. There's absolutely no allegiance, very little loyalty. There is no loyalty. There is utilitarian alliances that last for as long as they last, and when they're over, man, you're out. I don't care if you're my best friend. Boom. You're no longer useful, and we will amputate you and grind you up and put you in soup. Doesn't matter if you're, my mother, whatever. They do this. Reptilian bloodlines. And they can also be, there's also an aspect that there's a substance, or in certain bloodlines, it's easier for dark forces to maneuver them, because they can carry a very strong current, which sometimes can be a very useful thing. I mean, we've used that too. I carry that too. However, I'm committed. I have a certain very strong bent toward transmutation, where I'm not going to let it go in that direction. But I do understand the dynamics of how certain things can happen. And one of the things that happened with Josh when he was in power is that people wanted his power. They wanted to rule France, and they wanted to be in charge of the money, and they wanted to be in charge of them. So when he got ill, they didn't want him. They didn't want him to get better. Sometimes they did, depending on who, but basically they wanted him out of power. And then they all went to war to see who could get the throne, whatever. But what I found fascinating because I recognized it. I knew exactly what that was. They were describing his madness. And when they described his madness, this wasn't what I thought I was going to be talking about, but when they were describing his madness, well, I knew exactly what that was. And probably if any of you are starseeds, you would recognize this too. What we were trying to do, what we went down to do in this construct, is get the higher frequencies into density. And when he got ill, he left his body and he couldn't get back in it. Because one of the things, I have a lot to say about this. I don't think I'm going to say it all now. I'm just going to tell you this one little piece. He went off the timeline. Absolutely. And one of the things he had said that they used, they quoted him as, like, this is why we're saying he's crazy. He says that his body's made of glass and he has to carry iron around with him all the time. And I read that and I'm like, well, I know exactly what that is. When you leave your body, you're in a higher dimension, and we all know that everything is transparent there. You can see through physical form. You know where the illness is. You know where, but it's really hard to get back into your body when you're that high up. And Carmen was there to help anchor him, and I was there to. We have this rotational thing, right? So he's in his body, and then he shoots back out. It went out of balance the same way when something starts to spin. It could really be difficult to stop a rotation if it's lopsided. He couldn't get back in his body. So one of the things that will help you get back into your body is what? Why do we wear hematite? I'm not wearing hematite. I usually wear hematite. Hematite has a very high percentage of iron. It's grounding. It will anchor you. So he knows this. He shot out of his body. He said he didn't know who people were. He didn't recognize his own wife, didn't recognize Carmen, who was Isabel of Bavaria, who said, who is this woman? He had a difficult time taking care of himself. He lost contact with 3D is basically what it was. And then because his the energy was rotating, sometimes he would come in, he would grab a portion of time where he would be lucid, and they would give him his power back temporarily. He'd be in his body for a couple of weeks, but he'd shoot back out again. And they'd say, oh, he's mad again. And one of his brothers, but they really didn't want him there either. There was also, he didn't have a comfortable life. It was a hard position. He didn't, he definitely needed to be around higher vibrational people and was adversely affected by everybody around him, number one, being malicious. But they also just didn't know what was happening. They had no idea at all. And probably, I'm sure he absolutely seemed crazy. The same way, for those of you who follow my work or who are on the Ascension pathway, those of us who do this work, who hasn't been called crazy? People in 3D can't see what we can see. They think we're nuts. And there is a time, and it's, I had wanted to talk about, since when am I in charge of this? I had wanted to talk about the financial system being strongly affected by hidden misogyny, because we've got to talk about that. We have to talk about secrets and why I have to do this publicly, which I finally understand after yesterday, because my guides did let me sleep last night. I slept most of the night, but I woke up in the morning. We had about 2 hours where they gave me certain insight, and I thought, okay, I get it. Why it has to do with secrets, but it's all anchored in that one fucking little lifetime. 2 years in the Middle Ages that are so relevant now, because we have to take it back to 0 point. So it's very important to figure, in order to get through, like I had to figure out where the imbalance is. which means I have to know what happened there so that I can see the way it just got out of hand. Like the worst fucking oil spill on the planet. And you have to patch this shit back together, and it's hard. But I have to know the circumstances that were the seed, because certain things came out of it that were positive that we needed. And this is what I mean. We made alliances. Like we knew that, walking the plank, what are you doing? We made alliances. We knew that it was going to go off in both directions. We did not know it was going to get quite so locked into the extremes, because bringing this back has been really a bitch. It's taken a really, really, really long time. We thought it was going to go faster. Not just me. I'm like the queen of impatience, but we all thought it was going to go a lot smoother. The first plan was better. We had to make a lot of adjustments, and plan B wasn't as good as plan A, but plan A, what can you do? Sometimes you have to go to a plan B, so fuck. At any rate, King Charles went from Charles the Beloved when he was lucid and handling money to Charles the Mad when he was out of body, recognized could see through everybody, and had to carry iron. He wanted iron to carry with him everywhere, because he was trying to anchor himself. And so so it's interesting to note too, as someone who has also been very far out of body and had very extraordinarily difficult time, still not completely being in it. I'm extremely anemic. Every force evolves a form. I can't keep iron to save my life. I had to have a port installed to get iron IVs twice a week, because I don't even absorb it. It's so difficult for me to absorb iron and cancel. And gradually, the doctor said yesterday that he's surprised it's taking me. So most of the time, with twice a week iron IVs, he would expect my iron level to rise a lot faster, but it's just creeping up. And that's because iron has properties, but I pull up very, 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 very strongly, and we're working against each other. Like the higher force always dictates the lower. It will 3D isn't causal. To a degree, you can, whatever. I won't really get into that, but it's the higher force that governs. So I have to really align myself with being in my body and strongly intend the iron to bring me down, bring me back into body, which is difficult for me because, a lot of reasons. It's uncomfortable. It's just uncomfortable for me to be here. At any rate, so if you look at the two sides go back to the finances and the feminine. So here's the chalice. And what we need to do is have the hyper, how do I want to say this? The hyper engulfing, hyper sexualized side of it. It's the side of femininity that is, I feel like there's a really good way to say this and I'm not doing it. Help. I know that part of the problem with receiving on this end, that would be my side. So I'm very poor because it's this, in the spiritual community, we've been told, not to repeat everything I said yesterday, but we've been conditioned very, very strongly that it is better to give and receive, and no receiving under, you're shamed. You're shamed if you receive. And your feminine genitalia is bad. The receiving end is bad. Cancel. I don't, every time I catch myself, I'm going to ring that bell. Clear. Advance. I could feel that coming off. But also we've been to, oh, they're working on this. If you haven't heard the other live streams, we're surrounded right now. We're connected, and our energy is connected. And I do a lot of clearing for the group, but also you're also helping me clear the aspects that I need assistance with. And when there's a lot of clearing happening, sometimes they tell me to just be quiet. I'm like this giant pipe, and they're just going to work the energy through me. And sometimes, like I lose vision, my eyelids get very heavy, and it feels to me like when the energy is really being cleared through me for the collective, it feels like they take off the top of my head, not just my crown chakra, but like down to here. And I just become this smokestack, like an underwater volcano, and energy just flows. And my speech will get very nonlinear. I very often repeat myself. The movement will escalate. And like right now, I can't see anything. It's very, very blurry. So we're just going to let this run, because whatever we were talking about, we hit a portion and they're just clearing it. Well, I don't know whether you can feel it or not, but it's going to affect everybody who's listening. And the purpose of this live stream, whether I speak about it on a linear level or not, it's still working. This is one of the things that I know, when I haven't always been this nonlinear. There was a time in my past when this kind of activity would have driven me just batshit crazy. Get to the point, lady. This is so non-productive. I have learned better. I've learned that there's actually something happening. And I would ask, so it's not that I don't understand impatience. I do. I just recognize now that there are an enormous number of forces that are being adjusted, and quite a bit more is happening than we're aware of. I'm aware of it. Once I connect, I feel like there are people here who need to know this. Once I connect with our energy streams, unless you deliberately disconnect it, they're just going to stay connected. I think we're going someplace nice. So I would say, you tuned in for a reason. Just let our guides do the work. You're in safe hands. There's also, I will say, this is important. I have established a precedence of integrity where under no circumstances will this energy ever infringe on your free will. So there are some healers who, and there's also a stage when you learn energy healing. There is a stage where you go through it. It's like just learning anything, where you have to ask every individual's permission. There was a time that I did that too, no matter what I worked on. I remember trying to get the permission of a rhinoceros in the zoo once. And it took me a really long time to connect with him and get his permission, because I wasn't sure if he said yes or no. But now I know how to bypass all of that, and I can just do it for the group and simply say, I am establishing, I don't need to get their permission. I'm establishing a network. It's easier for me to connect with your higher self. And that's who you would get permission from anyway. So I have just established my own intention that under no circumstances will anything I do energetically infringe on your free will. So you always have an open door, an open invitation. But if there's an aspect of the energy work that makes you uncomfortable, it will automatically stop until you are a willing participant, because I have stated that that's true. So we'll just leave that there. So once our energy streams are connected, your highest level personal guides and my highest level personal guides, we're all connected with one another. Everybody who is listening, everybody who is already in the network is all connected. So if you are tuning in for the first time today, there's already a fairly large river of energetic well-being and love and community. It's really a community. And every time I do one of these streams, we add a little bit more. And it's going to pick up and generate. A lot of that, I do understand that a lot of people cannot yet visualize it. There is coming a point where that's going to become apparent. And one of the things I'm so excited to talk about, and I want to talk about this part so much. They're telling me I really do need to just finish the geometry, but I can feel in the collected group consciousness. One of the things I can very easily pick up on by percentages. God, I really have a lot of information to deliver about this, about developing psychic awareness, because it is my goal to make sure that you guys can see this too. Number one, I don't like to be called crazy. I'm tired of it. There are also a whole bunch of us who, we can all see it. If I was the only person who could see this shit, I would be worried too. But it's very reassuring when you begin to connect with the right group of people. And because sometimes you can see something and you just don't say it, and you don't say it, and you don't say it, and you don't say it, because you know better than to say it, because they're going to think you're crazy. And you tell one or two people and you get I just feel like if you're listening to this, you've had some sort of experience where at least it's piqued your curiosity. Or you've seen something and you don't know what it is. And there's a whole, it's like I can feel different groups of you. And some of you, there's a group of you that, this is the group that like, I just feel like you're my children. I do. I feel that way. And this is the part that I'm so excited for. I just can't wait to talk about it, because there is a group of you who are giving off this energy, this feeling that you don't really want to say it. You're afraid to say it, but you definitely feel it. And everything in higher dimensions is transparent. So one of the things I must tell you is that we know your motivation. In the third dimension, shit like lying in the legal system and lying is possible, because you could just tell somebody that you best wishes or namaste, love and light. And if you don't mean it, you could still get away with it by saying the words. It doesn't happen. We can see your motivation. There is a level of empathy where we can tell what you're feeling, and we can also tell your motivation. So just because you're an empath doesn't mean you're necessarily going to write, because there are empaths whose motivation is fucked. So they will know what you're feeling, but they will use it to their own advantage, and that doesn't come with us to 5. But there's a group of you that I'm really strongly connected to in my heart, who are asking, why can't I see fairies? And what if I can't see them? How come other people can see? I want to see dragons. Do I want to see dragons? How do you see dragons? And how come? And there's a feeling among some of you that, oh, I love this group so much. They're worried that they won't be able to do it. They're worried that there's something wrong. With them, because on some level they remember it, and the soul recognizes truth, and they want to go back to the place that they remember where they could connect when they were babies. It's very, very, very much exactly, actually, it's just like Narnia, where Susan forgot and Lucy remembered. But there's a group of you. I met with a woman a couple of weeks ago, and she said, how do you connect with guides? I feel like I want to know fairies, but I've never seen a fairy. How do you see a fairy? And she was really worried. And the thing about it is that I could see that she was of fairy lineage. The reason she wants to see fairies is because she was of fairy lineage. Ugh. There's a certain tragedy in this work that we're going to turn around. We're going to transmute it, because we are going to talk about how there's a process. But the process always, always, always begins with genuine desire. And you can't fake it. So you have to really learn inventory, and but there are certain things that you've seen more than you probably, more likely, probably. You have the skills, but you have forgotten to apply them, or you're misdirecting them. We're going to talk a lot about the reacquisition of certain abilities that you were born with. You were born right. You weren't born fucked up. The idea that everyone's born a sinner just means we're all going to make mistakes, but you were born perfect. You had all of your abilities. And you were born telepathic. They were definitely going to talk about that. There's going to be some kind of a chapter where we talk about reaccessing certain abilities. Some of it is going to come back like magic, and some of it you just have to open up to. But I promise you, the excitement in the spirit realm to get back in and reach you is so unbelievable. I mean, it's indescribable. It's like trying to reach your baby and being thwarted their entire life. The celebration that's going to happen when you finally remember who you are and you reconnect, like, that's real. That's real. And much of the time you've just shut it down, and to such a degree, in pieces, and you were taught that way. You were conditioned. And it also goes along with, so that's why it's attached to this conversation, because there are let's talk about being shut down due to modesty, because it actually is connected to the topic of the divine feminine receiving, which brings me to what I was going to say about the divine masculine, which actually was on topic, because I said that the divine feminine needs to open this way, right? In order to reach the 11, you have to take the chalice, and it's the tightly sealed virgin aspect that is not allowed to receive. And if on the receiving end, if you receive too much, you're called a slut. So what has to happen? We have to cool it on the slut shaming, and allow ourselves to receive equally, give and receive equally. That's what needs to happen on the feminine side. On the masculine side, the masculine, we're talking about the physical form that needs to reduce the amount that's coming up from the physical, like reduce the density, and more light has to come in. So it's the crown chakra on the lower triangle that, in order to bring it back into balance and become the 11 channel, the crown chakra must open. So this is why we're talking about opening to spirit. That's why it's linked. I really need a tissue. 1 second. So opening to spirit it also relates to body shame. They're definitely related. And also, it's not gender specific. If you haven't heard me talk about this before, it's not gender specific. Because each person has to reach a masculine feminine balance within themselves before they reach it with another partner. It's your masculine active nature, and it's the feminine receiving nature. And also the balance of spirit and the balance of matter also have to meet in the center. This is the ladder of ascension. Hang on. On the subject of fairies and seeing higher dimensional beings, of which there are tons. There are many, many. Dragons exist, mermaids, unicorns exist. Do they exist in the third dimension? No. They exist, but there are beings that live in 4, and that's basically tied to 3. And even in 5, there are beings that are all over the place. There are different beings in different dimensions, and there are lots of dimensions. Centaurs are real. Dragons are real. There are many different kinds of dragons. The whole fairy realm, the elemental realm, everything has consciousness. Crystals have consciousness. Plants have consciousness, but also plants have beings. You can actually speak, and animals are telepathic. So a lot of the opening to spirit, the first thing that I always tell people, speaking of talking to animals, don't be rude. The first thing that I tell people is if you try to access something that's so far out of your bandwidth, you're going to meet with failure. What you need to do is kind of start where you are and start looking around. And I promise you, the act of just being open to it, the amount that is eager to meet you is going to come in. Please just don't tweak my jewelry. I would rather not put you back in your house, but I'm happy to do that. You're the one who wanted to be here. A lot of times people have an expectation of what something has to look like. So when something different shows up, they deny it because they don't think that's it. I was expecting something different, so that can't be right. Stop. I might put you back. I might put you someplace else. They deny it. And as soon as you deny something, you shut it down. It's met with resistance, so it doesn't come back, especially if you make a habit out of shutting it down. You've developed a patterning that says, no, I'm not open to that, over and over and over and over and over. Now it's a groove that says, I don't get messages from spirit, because you were expecting something different. But actually, if you're open to everything, the reason babies are so telepathic, I really am going to do another chapter about this. Come here. I want it to be a body of information that's delivered differently. But this is a talk about receiving, and also the divine masculine, and also so the lower triangle, the blade, is based in density. If you think about the lower triangle, the majority of its energy is physically based, the majority of its weight. So it needs that to go forward. It likes that kind of thinking, that model, that paradigm, likes to see something tangible. The problem with that is that for real, something cannot come into existence until you believe it. So it's very, very important to not place too much, to merge the spirit and physical form in a certain way. It just has to be done in a certain way. One of the ways we need to do this is to recognize and say yes to the spirit that is already in physical form. Recognize that objects move. Think Disney. Objects have beings in them. You know, Merlin is always making objects move around. Things have personality. Say yes to that kind of thinking, because it really does work that way. One of the things I said to one woman I had a session with the other day, whose guides were, who was of fairy lineage, and we were discussing how to get her to contact fairies. One really great thing about her session that impressed me, she's the only person I've ever had, but this was cool. I said, what can I help you with? What do you have a session for? She's like, I don't know. She had no agenda. Absolutely nothing. She was just open to see what was there, and she had no preconception. She was just crossing this threshold, and information did really, like, first I was a little bit worried myself. I was like, well, gosh, I don't know what to help you. I'm getting nothing. But then I realized that there's a population, because every single person I work with represents a whole group. And whatever work I'm doing with her, the individual, I'm doing for an entire group. And I loved that, because I recognized what stage she was at. And then I was so excited. That means that there's an entire group attached to this, and this is now their experience, and we have to talk to them. And this session is about that. It's about the people who are just beginning. They're just crossing the threshold to higher consciousness, and they've been largely conditioned in the third dimension, and they've been schooled, and they've been living their entire life that way, but they've heard some things, and it's just like an exploratory, let's see what's happening. But there's this, it is relevant. There's this threshold with, we talk about like stepping, if you think about stepping out into a void where you don't know what's there. Sometimes we picture something dark, like stepping off into outer space. But stepping off into a light void is just as scary. You still can't see anything. Stepping across a threshold into, you know, a blinding light, you don't necessarily know what's there. And one of the things I said to this woman is that she has seen a lot more than she realizes, but sometimes before you see something fully formed, you will see, like I was telling her about fairies, the way the fairies are first going to appear, because they're just trying to reach you. Your belief needs to precede the full, or your affirmative. You really do have to be in an open space of reception before you see something that is more tangible or clearly identifiable. But you've got to meet them halfway in a state of openness, expansive thinking. And this woman was in a perfect space for that, because she said, I don't know, you know, basically like, lead me. It was fantastic. And when fairies first appear, if you're somebody who doesn't see like whole fairies, or you've seen illustrations of fairies and you think that you should be seeing something like that, like that's what a fairy, I think I know what a fairy looks like, and I had never seen anything like that, so I haven't seen any fairies. I told her that I told her where to go. If you go to rapidly moving water in the sun, you're going to see a lot of light sparkles in like rapids, and sun will come down, and that's a fairy hatchery. There are certain locations, not all of them, but certain locations, definitely, like I know one. I know where there is an actual fairy nursery. You know how certain, not that it can happen other places, like individual animals will be born, but there are certain breeding grounds where there's a merge where like everybody comes here to lay their eggs, in certain animal species. Fairies do that too. There are fairy locations where there's like a fairy nursery, and if you go to rapidly bubbling water, like not crashing water, someplace like in the woods where you would raise a baby, and you see like gurgling streams, and there's a lot of spring is a really good time. Get a sunbeam. If you find a sunbeam that's on top of rapidly moving, I don't know how to explain this. The water has to have a certain quality. It's not going to happen everywhere. And then I don't want you to go find moving water and say, well, I didn't see any fairies, because I might not either. There might not be some there. But there's, I do know where there's a fairy nursery, and we see fairies every time we go there. But I told her that I knew that the nature spirits were calling her in her backyard. My advice to you, if you are somebody who wants to open to spirit, and that is important for this phone call, because we have both men and women, whatever aspect of yourself is too closed at the top, you just need to change your geometry. If you are believing in physical matter more than you're believing in imagination and letting that lead you, they need to be equal. When they're equal, your physicality will rise and spirit will permeate, and you'll be like one of those, what a weird image. I don't know why this is the image they just popped in my head. I don't even know what this is called. Is there's a, I think there is. Is there a European chocolate bar that has, it's like chocolate, but it's like carbonated chocolate? They're telling me there's something like that. It's like foam. The consistency, it's no longer solid. It's permeated. um, like a sponge, only good. Not squishy. Um, it's a lighter, ow, um, a lighter version of matter. And our physical bodies in the fifth dimension actually are undergoing this process. So I know that a lot of people in the third dimension will say that that I'm crazy and everybody else who believes this is nuts. But we are moving from being carbon-based beings to being crystalline-based beings, and we're going to weigh less, eat less. The substance of our form is changing in order to accommodate more light, and the movement of energy needs to be able to flow through us more. It's cutting down on our density. Cutting down on our carbon, definitely cutting down on our carbon footprint too. All sorts of things are going to be are already different in the fifth dimension, for real, for real. But getting everybody up there, everybody who wants to go, it's important because the rules change. The planetary ascension is also planetary upliftment. And getting light, getting spirit to permeate density, to permeate the physical, the lower triangle, is a matter of reducing dependence on the physical, reducing the amount that we're weighted there, and becoming the 11 gateway, which means you need to open yourself, open your crown chakra. And that's how you're going to merge with the chalice, who has done the same adjustment. And then you're going to have the 11 gateway. So where was I going with this? When you see fairies for the first time, you're probably going to observe them as light, flashes of light. Also orbs. Like, the worst thing you can do if you start it, the best thing you can do is verbalize. I want to open myself up to spirit, and it's not that difficult. You can put it in your own words. Say, I want to open myself up to spirit, and I want to see some of the things that Stephanie's talking about, and all these people, I don't know what they're talking about, and your guides are going to be so happy to talk to you. They already talk to you. That's the thing. They already talk to you constantly. It's you who you haven't heard it, if you haven't identified it. But one of the things you can say is, show me a sign. I want to know what a sign is. If all around me, everything in matter, everything is moving language, if every force evolves a form and I'm surrounded by forms, then show me the force that it is. I want to see these energetic ingredients. I'm willing to receive. It's basically being willing to receive on both sides, wherever side you're pinched. If you have too much chalice energy, then perhaps you're not accepting of the physical. That's been my issue. That's why. Hang on a minute. I'm gonna go back there. Just a second. Oh no, God, you're not talking to me. Wait a minute. Remind me to okay, because I definitely learned telling that story, but I want to finish this story first. All right. I had intended to talk about something else, but I'm going to go here because I like it. Spirit communication. How does it work? And where do these voices come from? We're suspect. Some people are naturally clairaudient, but everyone is born telepathic. And I have all kinds of stories about telepathy in children. I love to tell those stories, but that's not the one I want to tell you tonight. What I want to tell you, because we're talking about guides and various stages of being open or closed. So I have a relationship with my guides, which is robust. To put it mildly, I have a really robust relationship with my guides. They're palpable. They're okay, they're not palpable. But they're omnipresent. I never want to get rid of them, but I do argue with them. I argue and I know they have the aerial view, but I have the lower view, and I'm the one who has to go through it. So it's not like you must defer. They do understand, they do see my experience because I am transparent to them. They do know exactly what I'm feeling. They know exactly what I'm thinking, which is why I can verbalize something and they hear it. But when, and I get a message back, this could happen all in my head. When I verbalize something, it is often for my own benefit. If words are coming out of my mouth, my ears need to hear it. Sometimes it's just more comfortable for me to speak. It's a different kind of energetic movement. So I very often argue and talk out loud, talk to my guides. Sometimes I will hear an answer. Also, I don't know. The communication is multivalent. Sometimes they will answer through an object. Like that's one of the things that signs can be. Communication will come back via an object. If a bird suddenly lands on my shoulder, I will take note of that. Unless a bird is always on my shoulder, in which case I'll say, "Oh, there's the bird." But everything you do is relevant, sure, very important. But it's very important to recognize that nothing you do is random. Nothing that happens in the world is random. As you walk through the world, you're walking through language, and it's just an energetic symphony with its informational symphony everywhere. And it's always moving. It's just always, signs are everywhere. There is nothing that's not a sign. If something catches your attention, particularly if you say, give me a sign, I want to see something. Tell me something like this. Energy takes the path of least resistance. That's really important to understand. Energy takes the path of least resistance. So sometimes, if I'm very clairaudient and I'm practiced I have a very open crown chakra, an answer may get, if I pose a question to God, let's say, I want an answer. And depending on the assortment, the array of tensions in whatever, I could get an answer directly into my head where I suddenly know the answer. But if I'm thinking really hard, there's more resistance there that's kind of already occupied. They could put the answer into somebody else's head and have that person walk in who just happens to mention it and keep going. That could be the path of least resistance. The path of least resistance could be that, a book falls off a shelf and I happen to pick it up and there's my answer. An object could be moved and I happen to notice it and there's my answer. Or I could overhear something in a passing conversation. If you just pay attention to your environment, it's all around you. There is no one way that it's going to reach you. It could reach you a ton of ways, particularly if you're open to having it reach you any way it can. All of a sudden, you start to get messages from just everywhere. Absolutely everywhere it's coming. It's everywhere. So, before I tell you this one story that because I definitely want to, I want to go back to the Joan of Arc lifetime briefly and tell you why it's important that I'm talking, revealing and disclosing certain things. The reason this is, we have to bring everything back to 0 point, right? So in the Joan of Arc lifetime, one of the other famous things was that Joan of Arc was tortured for keeping a secret. Without getting, because I don't want to make the energy go back to density, but I do want to talk a little bit about why disclosure is my job. I want to talk about the flow of information, and it's important for me to do this in a public forum because in order to bring everything back to 0 point, if the first wavelength was that of secret keeping, everybody wanted to know what the Dauphin said to me when we met in private. And I'm not going to tell you. I will tell you that he spoke to God and I knew what he said. And there was a time before he was turned that he, the energy has shifted. And I don't want it to go back here. I want to turn it back around. There was a time that he was very pure and actually had a genuine question, a plea. As dark as and callous and awful as he became later, even though he was the one who betrayed me, there was a time when I first met him and I was the answer to his prayer. He had prayed in private because his mother, Isabeau of Bavaria, his father had died, King Charles had died, and there was this youth who had no training and was basically, he lived a life of fear. He's not particularly, you can call someone a coward and it does not have to be an insult. Please hear it with ears of compassion. He lived a life in terror. His energy was very apparent and he was very scared. And there was a time where he was losing the country and his own mother didn't want to put him on the throne. She thought the throne should be taken over by someone from England. And he was betrayed and he was in a dark place and he was young. And I won't tell you exactly what he said because I said I would keep it a secret. But there was a time that he prayed to God when he was alone. And when I was Joan of Arc, I will go back to our first meeting, not right now. And I'm going to tell you about 0 pointing that too. It's a different episode. I want to get back to spirit communication, but this is relative. It relates to it. He had prayed to God. And he had hit a low point, which is usually what happens. You hit a place where you're actually genuine, where your motivation is pure, and you're not trying to get something. He had reached a place of actual asking. That's a key difference. That's a massively important thing to understand. If you are it all comes back to the energy that you carry and your own platform of asking. If you have a genuine question, Am I any good? What am I supposed to do? There's a quality of genuine asking from a place of humility that is always the sweet spot that is honored. And if you can reach that point, not only will you get everything, every answer, but you have to, and part of it is about familiarity. You know, you have to know what it feels like to reach a place of like courage and humility. There's a kind of a partnership with God when you hit a sweet spot of balance in the center. When there is no, you're acting with courage, but you're so raw. You're putting your entire self on the table. And you're just broken wide open, and you actually ask from a place that is so real. And that's the place that he had reached, and it was rare in him. It still is, but it was rare then. He was young. He was young, and it was 600 years ago. All lifetimes are concurrent anyway. But there was a place of I won't say purity, really, because and he really did have a lot of fear too. He had a lot of fear, but he was asking from a place of genuine concern, and his heart actually was in the right place right then. And he made some very specific he asked God some very specific questions, and he was alone. And without telling the entire story, which I do want to leave for another episode, there was a peasant girl, basically, not really peasantry, but lower middle class. And I showed up at court, and we had a meeting after the famous first meeting where he lied immediately. First thing he ever did to me was lie. That should have told me something. I've learned a bit since then too. But and the first thing I did was offer. But we had a private meeting, and it was because of the private meeting that he agreed to let basically a peasant girl who was a peasant girl, give her an army. And everybody wanted to know what I said to him. And all I did was, I knew what he had asked God. And I'm not going to tell you what it is, but the energy of keeping a secret, and they tortured me for it too. And everybody really wanted to know. And they put me on trial, and they really, bent my fingers back, and they wanted to know what. Just tell us, tell us, tell us, tell us, tell us. You're not allowed to withhold. There was an energy where I was always supposed to give, but I wasn't allowed to receive anything. And it set up this, this imbalance. But I want to talk about spirit communication. We have to reach as a group, but I know I have to lead this, full transparency. So, and there's also a whole chapter, a whole live stream at some point where I'm going to, I've got all these notepads full of things that I need to address. And every time I go to organize it, it drifts into another one. So I guess I'm just going to keep allowing it to happen, even though it's annoying even me. I do want to talk about detaching from icons, which is what we're doing now. By reaching 0 point, we're changing the wavelength in order to create something new and not go back and get locked into these repeat patterns where we have these icons. We have to reach 0 point. So you have to, in order to reach 0 point, if everything has a vibrational frequency, in order to bring it back to a 0 point, you have to do the opposite thing at the to the same degree, or some variant. Like if you don't do it all at once, you could do you could meet its opposite in a number of different levels, a number of different times. But it's like a quantity. You want to reach 0 point by doing the opposite, in applying the inverse wave. So that's one thing I have to disclose. There was, at the Joan of Arc lifetime, there was a significant amount of energy. It wasn't just me holding the secret. It was the public enraged that I had a secret. And it was me being tortured for having a secret. And it was me withholding. You know, you think about the energetic rivers that contribute to what is happening now, because it planted a seed in the Joan of Arc lifetime that continued to expand and expand and expand. So what is it now? If we want disclosure, I'm going to have to be part of disclosure, because I was part of the original withholding. So that's one of the reasons that it's my job. And that's going to open up the issues of women, because remember I told you I'm the transmuter for 100% of the negative alteration of Mary, the divine mother, feminine, who must remain silent, who aren't allowed to speak. It wasn't my intention to create that, and I still think that if you take a vow not to tell somebody what they said to God, you should honor that. But part of the redressing of this energetic pattern is that we need to open this back up. So if I'm this transmuter of 100% of it, and again, I'm not saying I'm the only one. Thank God. But I need to do a great deal of verbalization. It's important. And it has to be heard by a lot of people who participated in the original setting of that pattern. So while I'm disclosing, you're helping with the rebalance of the entire thing. And it will help by you receiving this information. It's contributing to people everywhere being open to receive. We're establishing more of the giving and receiving network. So where was I going with this? Oh, because I wanted to tell you, how long have we gone so far? Does it matter? What time did I start? 7, 8, 9. Should I keep going? Should I keep going, or should I, guys, when did you join? I wonder if I should keep going or if I should save this for. We're talking about spirit communication. I think I'm just going to tell you this one story, because I think, well, no, there are 2 stories. Yes, I will tell you this. I'll tell you the one story first. And then I'm going to tell you my story, because we're talking about communication with spirit guides. And this is a totally different conversation. I really thought that we were going to talk about this later, but I'm just going to go with it. And part of it, now that I brought up, now that he's been brought into the conversation, the Dauphin from the Joan of Arc lifetime, in this lifetime, his name is Michael Withall. I married him. And he lives in Riften in New York. We have 2 daughters. One lives with me, one lives with him. Still very much a time of duality. especially in that location. But that doesn't make him a bad person. There are different levels of spiritual maturity. And when he took the throne, when he was given the throne, because it was a plan B, it was originally supposed to be Josh who died. And the plan was for Joan of Arc to, instead of meeting King Charles the Beloved, King Charles the Mad, and helping to balance that out, when he was gone, there was like wild centrifugal force, and we went out of balance. There was a council meeting, and we decided that we were going to try to give the power, because so much planning had gone into that lifetime. We decided we were going to give the throne to the Dauphin, who was also King Charles. But he was young, very spiritually inexperienced. Really had no idea what he was doing whatsoever. And he was also, when you were born in a royal lineage, he was very late born. There were I forget how many children, but there were a long line of kids before him, and they all died. So he, like the older brothers, had been kind of taught as they grew how to rule. Certain things were expected, but the youngest one is like, you're never going to be king, so we don't care. And then suddenly he found himself in this position where he was clueless and thrust in a position where he didn't know what to do. Truly did not know what to do. Hence the vulnerability. And Joan of Arc was sent. So they sent me there to give him the crown, to make sure that he was the one who got the power. But one of the reasons that we thought that could work, had the potential to work, it didn't. It didn't. We thought that if he would, because he was very steerable, we thought that if we could put a very, very experienced co-ruler near him, who could guide him very strongly and help him make correct decisions, that would work. And so, having participated as King David as a child, I was an ideal candidate, and I was already there. So we thought that would be a fine opening. It did not go as planned either. He got very agitated because there was just certain protocols. He wanted it to be, he didn't think that, even though we did discuss it, and he actually signed a document that said, I will defer to your decision making. But then he didn't honor the contract. And he really did not want to be told what to do. He thought that since he was the king, his decision was correct no matter what it was. And that's not true. That's not true. I will go back to that a different time, but I do want to talk more about spirit communication, because we're basically the same people. We're all the same people. The way, I find this fascinating too. We change so little in general over lifetimes. You know, the same way, it's like you can look back at baby pictures of yourself, and you can, on a daily basis, you change over time, but you really don't change personality all that much. there are certain chapters in your history, but you can definitely see the continuum, can't you, in your own history? And each day, with enough of an overview, each day becomes like one lifetime. I can totally see that. Like tomorrow, I'm basically gonna be the same person I am today. Development works like that. Like I'm essentially the same, basically the same character, the same individual that I was then. And that's true with all of the people I've mentioned. Their personalities, their characteristics, very similar. There's much more alike than we haven't all changed that much. So here's a story. One thing I will say about Michael Withall, he's incredibly charming. Definitely one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. Very personable. But not particularly spiritually mature. Not spiritually mature. Ignorant. Quite ignorant. But raised both times in a family that comes from a place where social protocol and third dimensional, what's the word? Formula. There's a right way and a wrong way to do things. And when a person does this is what you do. There's just procedure. There's a correct procedure that's all based in the third dimension. And there are rules that govern everything as there is in the third dimension. Totally different operating system. But what I started to say was the way spirit communicates. So I went to college with Michael too. We met in college. And there's a story that I love that he told me. We were talking about, this is long before I knew anything about Joan of Arc. And I'm probably telling it somewhat wrong, but basically I'll give you the gist of the story because I think it's a good story. And it's true. When Michael went to college, his parents were basically secular. He wasn't raised in a Christian household, really, when he was a child. And during his first semester of college, his parents, his whole family got very heavily Christian. I find this fascinating, especially in light of what I later learned about who they are and our history as a group. But what I like about it is that when Michael went home, his whole family they were all like God crazy. They were suddenly they went to church all the time. And they would have like renew meetings and things. And he didn't believe any of that. And these weren't the parents that would really raised him. They had all this new stuff and he wasn't sure about any of it. And it wasn't his own personal experience. So like any of us, when it's not your own personal experience, you ask. And I love this story because the way he asked I don't think he's that much further along actually now. This happened when he was like probably, I don't know, 20, 19 something. When we first start to consider on our spiritual journey, there is a certain immaturity in the way we fumble a bit because that's normal, whatever. It doesn't come with any judgment at all. But he went home and he was in the kitchen, his parents' kitchen. He was by himself. And he wanted to know if it was true or not. Is there a God or not? And so he asked in a in the manner that one does ask when one is spiritually immature. He made a demand. And he said, okay, if there's a God, move that book across the table. And nothing happened. So those of us whoever's listening to this, if you follow my work, you're probably smiling too. Because you know the way this plays out. And you know, basically, it would bring a smile to us because we've been in this position too. I remember doing things like that. I remember times of pivotal points of ignorance where before I knew something, I didn't know it. So it doesn't come with judgment. I'm just looking at this, but I like this story. So he said, if there's a God, if you exist, move that book across the table. And nothing happened. So he thought, well, I guess that solves that. Then he hears the door open and his sister Anne comes in. She comes into this kitchen and she says, hi, Mike. She picks up the book. She looks at it and doesn't interest her. So she tosses it across the table and walks away. And the reason that, the reason I like that is because it perfectly illustrates the entire process. The ignorance of the person asking, who expected the answer to come in a particular way. It didn't come that way. But not only did you get the answer, did he wind up getting the answer that he was looking for, because the book landed in the exact spot that he had demanded. Not only does God give us an answer, but it's going to come sometimes, most of the time. It will come in take a path of least resistance, come in a way that we cannot expect, and physicality, we are the body of God. So it's not like, although it can, I'm not saying it can't, but in the third dimension, physicality, stuff, is the way spirit talks. It becomes something and it mobilizes, and so something will be moved. And very often we're the ones that move the thing. We are the body of God. So he says, move that book across the table. And in walks Anne. She picks up the book and throws it. And it wasn't that God didn't hear you. It was that you were answered. And the thing about spirit communication and gifts from God always, anyway, is that you are always given more than you asked for. Honest to God, that is true. You're always given more than you asked for. When I was in graduate school, I had a painting teacher, drawing teacher, actually, Martha. And one of the good things that she said, I quote her a lot in certain things. One of the good things that she said that really stuck in my head was that a good artist is always generous. Doesn't mean you can't be a minimalist, but you offer don't make your audience struggle. I mean, you can go in and ask, sure, and search, and and paintings have layers, and they should be things that you can explore that aren't, obvious. But a good artist is always generous. And a good creator is always generous. And even the geometry is generous. Ask and it is given. I say this all the time, that it works like one of those moving sidewalks that you see at the airport. But it only moves if you move too. But it will carry you. Remember that Joseph Campbell quote, take one step toward the gods, they take 10 toward you. It's absolutely true. You will always get more than you ask for. And you are always answered. So not only was Michael's question answered, it came in an unexpected way. And he was also given the answer to, how does this work? It was a whole other question that was lurking in the surroundings that he didn't have to ask that part. Because I'm also going to show you the way it works. It's the people that move the objects, and sometimes it's the objects that move themselves, right? All the beings work. Everything talks. And there is nothing that's not God. It's all matter. It's all photons. And it's essentially, it's all the same substance taking different forms. So it's here to tell you something. I want to talk a little bit about the subject of good guides and bad guides. Because as long as we're going into the terrain of disclosure, because there's a whole community, and it's different from the Ascension community. There's a lot of overlap. There's a whole community that focuses on Ascension and the upliftment, and we're really keen on getting everybody up there in the fifth dimension and the QRS, and they're always all these different little subgroups, little task forces, and everybody has their own specialty or their own I don't know, they're just different areas of the whole process. But when you get to talking about, then there's a lot of overlap. And some areas can get tense, like people understandably so, because we're just realizing that we've been lied to. And like, what can we trust? What can we trust? Can't trust anything. Can't trust the government. John of God, he's a rapist. Who can you trust? And there's false channels, and you don't know who you're getting, and there's a secret space program, and aliens exist, but a lot of them are dark. There are dark aliens, and they could pretend in the fourth dimension there are archons. How do you know? And they're all valid questions. When we go into, so I'm not going to talk about all of this, but I do have shit to say. We're going into terrain where issues of disclosure are going to be bigger. And a lot of people, one of the reasons this whole ascension process is so complicated is because a lot of people are opening simultaneously. We're, I said we're going in two different directions. It's a very complex thing when all of these groups are, there are cross migrations. That's exactly what it is. Just interdimensional cross migrations of different groups who need different advice, who need different things. And there's a beauty that's just exquisite, but if anything, people from the third dimension, lower dimensions, they really want something that is clearer. They really want more delineation. We need it. We need our boundaries. We need our structure. And they do. They are assisted by that largely because, hear this way I'm saying it, mostly because of location. in geometry. There's just a certain strata where babies need cribs. Babies need cribs. They like structure. Babies like to be swaddled. They just want to be held. They want support. And when you feel unsteady, you want more support. So I'm not knocking it. And very often I want more support too. That's the reason I ask my guides constantly, help, I feel too wobbly. I don't know, I feel unsteady. I don't know where I'm going. So it's understandable. I'm really not knocking it. I sound like I am, but I'm not really. Where was I going with this? Oh, so disclosure. Remember I was talking about the importance when we hear about certain information being disclosed, the importance of keeping an open mind when you hear it. And one of the things that happens when you get an aerial view or with more experience, you just realize that everything has a place and nothing's bad. You just kind of, well, that's not the way I want to say it. You develop a different way of looking at everything. So I think I can tell you easier if I explain it easier if my head's bothering me. It's just bothering me. Information comes in and suddenly my hair irritates me. I ask for caution. Not caution, that'd be the wrong word. I think it's important to cultivate the ability to hear something without jumping to okay, check yourself for the need to define something as good or bad. Just see if that arises in you. Because what often happens, particularly with disclosures, we want the security of knowing if something is good or bad. So should I be praying to archangels or should I not? Because somebody told me that, this was a question that somebody asked me a couple of weeks ago. I was told that we shouldn't be praying to icons anymore. So I used to have an altar and I really liked it, but somebody told me that archangels are really archons, so I shouldn't be praying to archons. So I took Archangel Michael down, and I used to really like that, but now somebody told me that all icons are bad, so I put my whole altar away, and I'm just trying to rely on myself. I'm not judging that at all, not at all. In fact, that person is one of the people that I totally admire. She's making a tremendous amount of her own particular spiritual journey, as one that I've been watching very carefully with admiration too, because I can kind of see people's vibration going up, but their energy going up, and their spiritual maturity, and hers has risen so freaking fast. She is just she has impressed me. Certain people, I watch them and I'm like, wow, you're doing something really cool. I can watch what your energy's doing, and I didn't think people could do that fast, but she's one of them who did. But I'm off subject. On Facebook, I look at a lot of, not as much as I used to, but I would have drifted around a lot of, various groups, and in the disclosure community, and particularly, like, a lot of people get information from guides, and it's it's very easy. Okay, this is what I wanted to say. It's very easy to become jaded. And particularly in the disclosure community, when so much information and a lot of it is extremely dark, right? So there's you want the information to come out, but the energetic platform that it's coming from must be tempered. Certain things have to be balanced. So you want to open your crown chakra and step forward on the foot of trust, but it's very difficult to do if at the same time the entire third, it also serves a purpose. That serves a purpose too. And everything in the third dimension, all of this information is coming out that nothing was trustworthy in the third dimension. Everything was a lie. The government wasn't working, and there were pedophiles in the church. And I mean, just every bit of filth is coming out of the woodwork. And you think, how can I trust anything? And you want the darkness to come up because it has to, but it's really a master's challenge. It requires certain things of us. Everyone who's on a spiritual journey, it asks new things of us. Where do we put our faith? What can we actually trust? There's a certain, in the act of disclosure, even though there's like an inside out turning. It's like very much like a Taurus ring. Where the idea of what guides can you trust, who can you trust, asks you to have more faith, but it really makes you doubt what you've always known. And it also, I'm going to talk about the energetic dynamics about that, but I'm not going to do it this very second. I do want to tell you the story, and then I'm going to go to bed because it's been really long. I heard on one of the, or I saw it written on one thread in a, some group about disclosure. You know, David Wilcock is, you know who he is, and he's working with Corey Good. And I would ask that when you hear certain information, try not to jump, try to hear it with ears of compassion and try to keep an open mind, not in a way that gulps the information, but in a way that is openly accepting, and realize that there's still people, and maybe not everybody is out to get you. And it's also possible that sometimes somebody might say something and they're just wrong, but they're telling you what they think is true. And they might not necessarily be evil people, but it's hard to balance that when you are hearing things about, so there's such a thing as MK Ultra, and there's brainwashing, and there's all of that stuff is true. And here's the evidence. Really tough to manage. And the questions are going to come up. So this is one of the reasons that our community is so essential to have up and running solidly. Because when the people who have been less awake, when they start on their spiritual journey, they're crossing this threshold, and we are way ahead of them in terms of practice and opening to spirit. We know how to trust what's invisible. We know that the visible can be falsified, and we've gone through a lot of our purging process. So we're going to be working on helping them transmute, but also leading them, and they need a certain kind of attention. And I would ask you not to feed the energy of landing on an answer that makes another person necessarily bad or good. Sometimes it's better to remain in the space of questioning and flow and just openly receiving all the time. Try not because one of the things I saw an exchange and it popped out at me. And I don't even remember what group I was in or what even the question was. But the issue of disclosure came up. And David Wilcock has talked to a lot of insiders, and Corey Good was one insider, and he knows all about the secret space program, and he has been working very closely with David Wilcock. And I saw on a thread a bunch of people who jumped in with an opinion, and one woman said, well, I heard that David has been compromised by the dark side. I heard that David is Corey's handler. And I didn't say anything, but I read down this whole thread and I was watching more of the energy of these people. And I'm thinking, how does this help? And what are you feeding? I don't know. What are you feeding? Be careful about, be careful, because your first creation is yourself. And you are, both sides exist, right? Without intending to. A lot of people talk about, if you're saying that David Wilcock has been compromised by the dark, and I've heard, what are you perpetuating right now? Are you feeding suspicion? Seems to me like you're dwelling in suspicion, and you've gone into a real, it's less about revealing light and much more about how can I hunt down the dark part? What are you deriving your pleasure from? I would say be very cautious about what's going on in you, and you can pay attention to, facts if you're interested in that kind of information. But I would ask that when you don't be too quick to judge. And that brings me to the last story that I want to tell you, but it's important. I was looking forward to telling everybody this story because it really is a very good illustration. And it relates to the blade and chalice merging also, because in terms of what I was resistant to receiving, where I was resisting going, because everyone has spirit guides, everyone. And your spirit guides, sometimes some of them are with you your whole life, and some of them come in just, for a task, or there are specialty guides. I did a whole post on that one time about calling in specialty guides for any given task. If she doesn't want to go into her cage later, I could call in a guide and say, I want a guide that's really good at getting birds back in cages. You ever try to put a cat in a box when they don't want to go into a cat carrier? I call in your specialty guide. I call on the spirit of this and the higher self of this cat and group souls of all cats. And I call in a cat wrangling specialty guide. Please help me get this cat in the carrier. If the telepathy isn't working, sometimes the telepathy is working just fine. And you know perfectly well your cat does not want to go in that box. They told you. Nope, not going. Anyway, I digress. Oh no, I know what that refers to. Right. That brings me back to the divine feminine. Yes. See, I thought that was just a little diversion, but it wasn't. I actually wanted to talk about the divine feminine being and body shame And the way that Christ is referred to as the king, the king of beasts and a lion, often portrayed as a lion, but the word is pussy. It's diminutive. It's the diminutive of the feline. And one thing I suddenly realized this morning, my nickname in our soul group, they don't call me Joe. Everybody calls me Kitty, baby cat, because my energy has been the divine child. I carry the child jurisdiction, and they lovingly refer to me as Kitty. And St. Catherine is in the same energy stream, but my nickname has been Kitty. And I was thinking about that. I associate that with a great deal of love, because it's my family, it's my soul family that calls me Kitty. And they always say it affectionately. But the way they arrived at that is that it's the baby cat, the divine child, the baby part of the lion being Christ. Then I started thinking about the word pussy. I will just leave that with you. There's a great deal of body shame and embarrassment and so many layers that have been installed in our consciousness. It's woven into language. It's everywhere. Cancel, clear, advance. Where we've been told that we are less than. Clear, advance. And not everything can be reduced to, I want to say that a different way. It's not that important to land on something, on an answer, a single answer, as being either good or bad. It's better. It will yield something more productive, put it that way, if you stay open, because that's what we really need to do as the body of Christ. And it's our job to do the work also. So the story that I wanted to tell you happened to me a couple of years ago, and I was very heavily in the work of purging, my personal darkest purging years. 2014, 15, 16 was bad too. 14, 15, 16, really, really horrible. And I think this happened in around 2015, this example. The whole Joan of Arc thing was really heavy. And I haven't even gotten into it, and I'm not going to today. I just want to tell you this one story, which is a good story, and then I'm going to close, because this has been extremely long. We're put me on like the third hour. 2 hours ago, yeah. Something. Well, whatever. Not quite 3 hours, but I'm gonna see if I can keep this under 3 hours. I said I was gonna make it shorter than yesterday. It went longer. So in about 2015, I was clearing the Joan of Arc template to such it was extremely intense purging. And when that energy comes up, it's like a revival of that persona, which I'm the same person, but I'm a much less saturated. There was a lot of darkness then. So in some ways, there's been a great deal has been cleared now. I'm much more back to myself and less in that everything that went with it. Extremely strong, extremely intense. And I was purging it very, very, very heavily at that time. And it was all about purity. And I had sacred everything going all the time. And I had candles burning and I was doing prayer rituals. I was doing clearing. Really like 18 hours a day. And I was doing tens of thousands of ho'oponoponos and just pacing and doing mala beads and praying and taking salt baths with pyramids on my head. And I had my crystals and I was purging and purifying, and that was my mission. And I was working on it very, very intensely. And my guides I was in constant communication. I knew what my job was. So we're on the topic of, can I trust my guides? How do I know if a guide is good or bad? Who can I trust? And some people, a lot of people, tend to think that they have an expectation that something is going to come a certain way and it's going to look like XYZ. I want to see a fairy or I want to see a dragon and it's going to look like this. And if I see a flash of light, that's not a fairy. I want to see a fairy. Well, I can't see fairies. If you acknowledge the flash of light, there's a very good chance that the next time it's going to come down the road, it's going to become more and more and more tangible, identifiable. It's going to meet you as you walk toward it with faith, as you open toward it. But don't deny it or demand that it has to show up to meet your own particular expectation. I want you to be in this form right now. You'll get more than what you asked for. So this is what happened to me. I was talking to my guides during this time of extreme purification, very much in that persona of I will be purified. And I thought I knew what that was going to take. And I only want to do high vibrational things. And boy, was I deeply committed. I was nothing but a light warrior. There are certain things that I simply will not do. I became extremely dogmatic, not so much with other people, but with myself. The discipline was extreme. Was extreme discipline. And I knew how, I want to drink this much water. I want to get this much accomplished. I want to get this much accomplished today. And one time my guides, and I know my guides, there's a team of guides, and I know them. And one time, and I do argue with them. I do a lot. This is one time, my God. I will just continue with the story. One time, so sometimes they will tell me something to do. And very often it's something I don't want to do. Or very, very, very often it's something I don't understand. And I'll go do it anyway. Especially when they don't leave me alone unless I do it. And I usually wind up doing it anyway. And then when I do it, I almost always see why they told me to do it exactly that way. And I've got tons of stories like that. And I'll tell you, hair's bothering me. It's not the way it looks, it's the way it feels. Everything feels funky. And one time my guides, during the middle of this extreme purification process, they told me to go to Burger King and go get specifically a cheeseburger. They wanted me to go to the drive-thru at Burger King and get a cheeseburger and eat at least half. That's what they said. And my God, did I flip out. I couldn't stand it. Now, a lot of people, especially if I were to go on to some of these larger forums where these discussions take place, people have these, when the subject of channelers come up, well, you can't trust channels because you don't know who's talking. And that's true. Because we have been in the strata where people pretend to be other beings, pretend to be other beings, and you could get other, you could get anybody, especially in the third dimension. And I would never let my children do something like a Ouija board. It's like hitchhiking. You never know who you're going to get. And that has been true. But I'm saying that as we go up higher in dimension, as we ourselves become purified, we are less a vibrational match for darkness and deception. So it's going to become, or it is becoming safer to trust. And because everybody also at the same strata is also more trustworthy. You're surrounded by trustworthy people. But I want to talk about guides, because I was in a dark place when this happened. And if you go onto these groups and you say, my guide told me to go eat meat. Like, for example, I was on Real Angels the other day, and the direction is from Rick Jewers and various other people. It's very important for light workers to get their vibration as high as possible. So purify. Eat very high vibrational food, and drink a lot of water, and take your spirulina and get your vibration up. Watch your diet. Get everything has to be organic, and you will hear that from David Wilcock, and you'll hear it from Rick Jewers, and you're going to hear it from Corey Good, who changed his whole diet, and everybody's going vegan. And I already was, and I liked it that way, and I really knew I was on the right path, and I'm getting pure, high. And then my guides come to me and say in no uncertain terms, you got to go to Burger King and eat at least half of a cheeseburger. And I remember where I was in this apartment. I was like, oh my God, no. I'm not going to do that. Of all the things in the entire world, why the hell would you tell me to do that? I don't do that. And I do listen to my guides, but not before I fight with them. And sometimes I resist guidance for a real long time if it's something that I don't agree with or don't understand. I know I'm getting agitated, and now you're getting agitated. So if I were to post on like a website like Real Angels, well, my guides told me to go eat Burger King, specifically Burger King. They told me to go get a cheeseburger and eat at least half of it. And what do you think the response would be? I can take a pretty educated guess and say probably a lot of people are going to say that's a false guide. A real guide, your spirit guides, would never tell you to do that because it's going to lower your vibration. And meat's out. We're all being vegans now. In the fifth dimension, everyone's vegan. And you don't want to be that. And you're corrupted by darkness. So it just really, in the disclosure community, particularly, everybody is very keen to see what can't be trusted. Then really, that's the dominant message. What can't be trusted? Let's go find it. So what does that tell you about what path you're on? I'm not judging. I'm just saying, flip it around and take a look at yourself and monitor your own energy to see, to tweak it. Nothing wrong with fact finding. You should definitely look out at and see what the situation actually is, or just be open to, you know, the fact that if as facts drift up, and every path is, somebody has to go into that terrain and dig it up. But be careful that you don't allow that to permeate you and turn you into, and you can very easily be tipped toward the negative yourself by calling everybody else corrupted. Be careful. I heard that David's been coerced. I heard he's Corey's handler. I didn't want to go get a cheeseburger. And my guides would not drop it. Would not drop it. And I know that when it's just something that they want me to do, they will nudge me and give me some space. And then I'll get the same message and they'll give me some space. And I've had it happen sometimes for, weeks at a time where I just keep getting this message. And then sometimes they want me to do something and man, it is just not going to go away until I do this thing and they won't let me sleep. And I know there's no getting out of it. So, and this continued with this issue, but my daughter will tell you that it's not just about not eating meat. I never allow them to have allowed my kids to have like Burger King and McDonald's, fast food, all of the factory farmed, particularly fast food. I never go there ever. I'm really against it. My kid, even like the wrappers aren't allowed in my car. I don't like those wax cups. They just, I hate it. But my guides told me to go do this thing. And I was living alone. My children weren't here. And it was night. It was summer evening. And I put the dogs in the car and we drove to Burger King. My God, the whole minivan, I was the only human being in it, but it was full of beings because everybody wanted to see what the hell was going to happen to me. And I kind of do wish now that I had that somebody had videoed it because, and someday I'm going to write down this story too because I want it written, but it was really, really funny. My guide said, just go to Burger King, pull up at the drive-thru, and the advice was, watch what comes up for you. Watch what comes up for you. And a good spirit guide is like a good therapist. Their job is not to tell you what to do. Their job is to guide you and make sure you go on your soul path. So I was already vegetarian and there were certain things that I didn't do. I don't eat factory farming. I'm very against factory farming. And anyway, I pulled up at the drive-thru and I ordered a cheeseburger. As soon as the woman's voice came on, can I help you? Woman's voice. And I immediately burst into agitated freak out and started crying. The thing that came up for me was, oh my God, she's probably a single mother. She's underpaid. Here she is, this poor woman. She's probably getting $6 an hour. And I said I would take a cheeseburger. But what came up for me was issues of social justice. Like it wasn't about me, but the amount of turmoil and judgment about every last issue And this cheeseburger was somehow the hub that tapped it. I mean, I was already a vegetarian. I don't eat factory farm because factory farming, no, we're not doing that. And it's true, in the fifth dimension, we're not doing that. But my guides were so wise. And because I was crying, I was in tears. I pulled up and I just fucking lost it. I was in a state of hysteria. I was crying. I couldn't pull up any further. And the issues that came up for me was this woman's being underpaid. I just ordered 1,000 cow slurry patty that's polluting the planet. It's ruining the environment. All of these beings have suffered. It's all wrapped in paper. Issues of the environment. I was horrified. I was terrified that my daughters would be driving by who were at a friend's house. What if they see me? I'm a terrible example. I'm a terrible example. What if they see me and I'm going against all my own rules? And it's a cheeseburger and the dairy industry is disgusting and they're everything about it. The lettuce probably has salmonella. The fast food industry, it's all linked to commerce. It's all trash. The issues of judgment, self-judgment, judgment of all the industries. I jumped to every conclusion there was. My guides, as I did eventually pay for the, I finished through the drive-through, and then I was on the exit, and I sat there in the car for 5 minutes and cried. And then I finally went, and I got wrapped in my guides. I said, I don't want to eat. The dogs are in the car. I just want to feed it to them. I hate everything. Talk about triggered. I was really triggered. I was triggered I was just an explosion of it. And you wouldn't think that a cheeseburger, you have to eat a cheeseburger, half a cheeseburger. We're aiming to get to a place where we can no longer be triggered. And I was not in that place. I was feeling very spiritual and like I had already arrived. And now we will all do this. And it's true. The odd thing is it's true. We are all going there. And factory farming is on its way out, and we're not going to pollute the planet. And there are going to be fair wages, and places like Burger King really are not going to exist the same way they have. Everything is actually changing. But my guides knew exactly how to get to my darkness. Where am I holding on to it that I didn't even know about it? So I was totally into clearing it. I totally was. My motivation was sincere, and I was really into taking buckets and shovels to get all of that clear. I was really into it. But only I didn't know exactly where it was. My guides did know where my darkness lay. So when you have a guide who tells you, or anybody else, to do something that maybe doesn't seem like it's necessarily so uber spiritual, they might just be the very highest level personal guides who know exactly what to do. And it's not up to you to judge judge somebody else's path. I did actually eat half of the Burger King burger, and I cried through it. And it tasted good. So this actually does have to do with the divine feminine, because my issue was twofold with that. I don't know why this is bothering me so much. I didn't want to consume or take anything into myself that was lower. Number one, I was very strongly in judgment. My guide said this to me, and I've never forgotten it. They said, I said, how can I, why would you tell me to consume 1,000-pound burger made out of slurry of animals that have been tortured, that have lived this? The energy of this is disgusting. It's disgusting. And my guides, and plus it's bad for me. It's really bad for me. Why do you want me to eat something that's so unhealthy? And the fucking wheat's been poisoned. There's weaponized food. Why would you tell me to eat weaponized food if we know that what this actually is? And my guide said, everything you said is true. Everything you know about the burger is true. What you're saying, nobody is contradicting your facts. The dairy industry is horrendous. That made the cheese. The factory farming meat industry is horrendous. And that made the damn burger. The labor force, the garbage that went into this. Everything you said about this and the unhealthy way it's been managed. The poison, the toxins, the Monsanto chemicals, the salmonella in the lettuce. It's all true. But eating half a burger, nothing that this burger contains is going to harm you as much as your own judgment. The thing that's really keeping your vibration down is your own contained and hyper solidified judgment that this thing is wrong. Can you feel the amount of energy and wrongness? I was so mad. Issues of social justice, things that my God, I had not even begun to tap that keg. It was a massive keg of rage that I had. Personal injustices are one thing. And I'm not saying any of that shit is okay, but when you deal with issues of the population, man, I really had it got my dander up. I don't like people dicking around with my populace. And they didn't tell me that I was wrong about that. But they did tell me that the thing that was impeding my own progress, that's the point. If you want upliftment, purity, where is your densest load of crap? And mine was in judgment of, I still hate it. I still really fucking hate it. But I'm not in judgment of it as much anymore. So now, once you're out of judgment, it becomes a choice, and then you get energy that can flow. If it's something that is a demand and a control system, that can work in either way. So you can either have a control system that says, oh, whatever they tell you in school, you must do this always. It's the only way it can be. And I had that big time. You can be a very, very, very judgmental vegan. But if you get rid of the judgment, you can still make the consistent choice to go as high and be as non-compromising. It just depends on how you play with the energy. You can make and in fact, you can make a loving choice toward, you can make the same decision every single time. But one of them, in one of those choices, you're making You're making it because it's a choice, not because you have to do it. And a lot of it has to do with forgiveness. Like when I went through the drive-through, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't, at that time, like now, if I did it, I would still be disgusted, but I would still be revolted and not want to eat it. But I would allow the experience of something unpleasant to leave me. It would flow through me and it wouldn't stick. I might still have to take a salt bath and stuff like that to rebalance my own energy, because I really am very sensitive to energetic influences. But now it's funny because on the surface, nothing's changed, right? Like I was not eating a burger before they told me to go eat a burger. I was not eating a burger. And I'm still not eating a burger. But the first time I was not eating a burger. And now there's just no way in hell I'm going to eat that burger. If I had to. But why would I have to? I don't have to eat that burger. I'm not going to. But there's a totally different energy with the whole thing now because I have dropped the judgment. But it was a process. And that particular process, man, I freaking choked on it. And I often have wondered what people would have seen if they saw me. Thank God there was no more traffic in the drive-thru. I was the only one. And it was probably wise because even the densest individual could probably tell that this person needs their space because they're losing their shit in the car. I just couldn't cope. The most disgusting thing ever. Don't make me do it. Don't make me do it. No one's chopping your hand off. Shouldn't be that hard. Why is this such a trigger for you? And what does that say about you if it's such a trigger? If you can't eat a hamburger, nobody's torturing you. So why does it feel like torture? And the nice thing, because it really has been torture, but the nice thing though is that on the further along the spiritual path, everything gets enjoyable. You wind up laughing. You've lived through all of like, I'm not saying that episode was terrible. I've lived through things that were absolutely terrible, for real. And that certainly wasn't one of them. That was just my own manufactured torture that I just had to get out of the way. Left over because I have issues dealing with social justice. Social justice issues just bother me. And I had never even thought about how much a cheeseburger from Burger King. Also, because my guides, this is why, you just never know. A lot of people would have said those must be negative guides. A real guide would never tell you to do that. But that's not true. A real guide will know exactly why. They didn't send me to McDonald's. They wanted to double down on every last fucking trigger I had. They didn't send me to McDonald's or some other fast food joint, any one of which would have worked if it was just social justice. They wanted me to writhe in and squirm with every issue I had. So they sent me to Burger King because in the Joan of Arc lifetime, it was all about royalty. And there's quite a bit in there about meat, just physical meat, not being able to have sex ever. Where's the beef? There's just, I think that was might have been Wendy's. I don't know why I know that either. But they sent me to Burger King because someplace in my psyche, that's another little, let's see what we can do to her that will tweak her. Let's see what are there any more hornets in the hornet's nest? We're trying to get them all out. Let's just poke the bear and see if it moves. Sometimes your guides are not here to soothe you. Sometimes they do soothe you. Thank God. They soothe me. If I didn't have them, I need them. I do need them, but I always have them. And you're never separate, ever. But where was I going with this? I forgot. Who's here? I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go to sleep. I'm very, very tired. I think this has been like 3 hours, but it's been very nice. In closing, I got my I paid for my new phone today. That's good. I haven't had a new phone in a long time, and it arrives on Tuesday. So I might start, maybe, we'll see. I might start to do live streams from someplace else. Oh, I didn't actually take down those banners. So make a note of the banners because I'm not going to take them down later here. I was going to. But isn't that interesting that I'm going to change that. The next time I have a live stream, this is all I'm going to equalize these. I'm going to take down those things and find a way to equalize that and rehang it because it's important. And it's so interesting that we just did that automatically. It wound up being that way, masculine over feminine. So I think we're going to alter that and see how it changes the energy of this transmission or the next, further transmissions. Okay. I love you. I don't know when the next one will be. Maybe tomorrow. I like doing them. I like talking. Today was a good one because my daughter is out for the, even though it's a school night, she's out overnight. So, all right. I love you all extra. And I will see you the next time. Bye.